Today is a somber day in history as it marks 22 years since the September 11th terrorist attacks in the U.S. I am thinking of all the victims that we lost that day, as well as those who have gone on to experience extreme health issues from their help in the rescue efforts at the Trade Center, and those who grew up without family members and loved ones because they were lost that day. I grew up in New York, about 60 miles from Manhattan, in a county which was the farthest county that FDNY and NYPD could live and work and commute to the city from. So our community lost a lot of people that day, as well as my classmates who lost siblings, older siblings who worked in the city, parents, grandparents, etc. One of my brother's closest friends growing up lost their father. He was FDNY. He had switched his shift to work that Tuesday so he could be off the following weekend for a family party. He had a close-knit family, 6 kids, and they lost their dad that day, and we would see them afterwards, of course, in the community, and how they had to contend with that. And I don't even think myself or a lot of my friends have fully processed what it was like to come of age during September 11th. I was 16 years old. I was in sophomore history class when I found out. We were only a week or two into the school year, but our teacher had already spoken about what he called these flashbulb moments in history. And he said, every generation sort of has this historical event that happens that they will always remember where they were when they heard the news. And for my generation, that is 9/11, as well as many other things that have happened since. But that is one of the biggest ones. So if you weren't born yet or you were too young to remember it happening, it is definitely something you should reflect on and think about why it had such an impact on this country and the world as well. And I would just like to know, for all of you out there who do remember where you were that day, share your story and let's reflect on that and process it and remember the people we lost that day. A lot of articles I was reading this morning spoke to exactly that. It has now been 22 years. This is now history. It's not something where we can say, oh, it was 2 years ago, it was 3 years ago. I remember for many years watching the coverage on the anniversary every year, but now it's been over 2 decades. So it's become more so history, and there's so many people alive now who weren't here when it happened. So let's reflect on that and make sure that we don't forget 9/11. And yeah, share your story with me where you were. Like I said, I was in history class. I remember this woman. I didn't know who she was at the time. I learned later she was like a teacher's aide or something. But we were all sitting in class listening to our teacher, and the door flew open, and this woman popped her head in and said, "A second plane just hit the World Trade Center." And we hadn't even heard about the first plane, so we just look, and my teacher went like this. He looked at all of us in the classroom, and then he looked back again, and he said, huh? And then after that, everything just devolved into chaos. Like I said, I was about 60 miles from Manhattan, and people didn't know what was going to happen at that time. Were there other attacks planned? The school district decided that they didn't want us on school buses to go home. And if I used to get a ride from one of my friends to school, but they said only family can take you home. So those of us who weren't old enough to drive yet or had our own cars, we had to go wait in the auditorium for a parent or family member to come get us. And everyone was really freaked out. I remember some idiot decided it was a good idea to shut all the lights off in the auditorium unexpectedly, and everyone screamed. Everyone was just really on edge, and we didn't know what was coming next. When we all got home, we started to watch the news coverage. Just remember watching it the rest of the day. And then as we returned to school, there were certain classmates who were absent for a while because they lost people. I know of people who lost uncles, brothers, parents. It was horrible to live through that. And I even had friends, their parents worked in the city and the cell service completely went down. One of my good friends, her father had to walk across the George Washington Bridge, get over to New Jersey and try and find help because there was no way to contact anybody. This is a real thing that happened in this country. And this is just a small part of how it affected me. Of course, the people who actually were there that day and witnessed this atrocity or died in it, we have to remember them and reflect on that today. So that's what I would like to do, have a moment of silence for them and share your stories because it's important that we don't forget this.